The first unit consists of introduction of communication, theory of communication, types of communication, and most of communication. First of all, introduction of communication. Communication is the human connection. Then, it is a personal key to personal and career success. If one want to achieve success both in personal life and career, the person should develop his or her communication skill. Some important definitions of communications are: communication is the process of passing information, understanding from one person to another. Here, the communication is in a process which used for passing information and understanding from one person to another. Communication is any means by which thought is transferred from one person to another. Most of the time, the communication is used for to conveying one's thought from one person to another. The most important communication skills one should need to focus: listening skill, speaking and non-verbal communication, writing, reading, and emphasizing. Then finally, the process of communication which consists of encoding, message, and decoding. Then finally, it comes to the communication process. The several major elements of communication. The seven major elements of communication process are: the sender, the first of all, and ideas encoding, the communication channel, receiver, decoding, and feedback. Then the objectives of communication. Here they listed out the few objectives of communication. The first thing, bringing dynamic in your organization. If you are working in anywhere, you should express yourself. The communication skill is the most of the one. Then ensuring effective employee orientation, creating better conscience in the workforce, directing the subordinate, providing effective facilitation of policy, giving fact rather than just sharing the impression, persuading after and recommendation, stimulating the demand and support brand. Then the types of communication based on the relationship, organizational structure, based on the direction and as well as the channel. The relationship based communication divided into five categories: the intrapersonal communication, transpersonal communication, interpersonal communication, group and mass communication. Then the organizational structure, formal and informal. And based on the direction, vertical and horizontal, upward, downward, and diagonal communication. And basis on the channel, verbal, it divided into two categories: oral and written method, as well as the non-verbal communication. Based on mode of communication, which was divided into verbal and non-verbal communication. If you are taking verbal communication, mostly the spoken and written words to conveying the message, especially oral form of communication and written form of communication. The examples: conversation, speech, presentation, email, letters, and reports. Nonverbal communication. Here, the nonverbal communication listed out through gestures, body language, facial expression, tone of voice, and eye contact, posture, and appearance. Example: showing to smiling to show approval. For example, if you are agreeing something, you should smile. Crossing arms to indicate the defensiveness, using hand gestures. Based on the medium, the first thing, the face-to-face conversation, a direct personal interaction where the individual exchange information in real time. In the face-to-face conversation, the person exchange communication in a direct method. For example, meeting, interviews, and casual conversation. Written communication, use written words and convey message, use more formal and structured. Example, emails, reports, books, newspapers, and notice. And visible communication, here, the people use images, charts, graphs, and other visuals to convey the information, especially infographics, maps, diagrams, and symbols and advertisements. Then finally, the digital communication, use a digital based on tools for sharing the information, especially social medias like WhatsApp, Instagram, and these kind of social medias. Then video calls, text messages, and websites. Then based on purpose of flow of communication, here the formal and informal communication, mostly the formal communication used in particular organization. Here upward, downward, horizontal, and diagonal communications are takes place, especially official emails and circulars, memos, and reports. Informal communication, casual, spontaneous communication without any formal structure. In informal communication, there is no particular formal communication pattern, but here the informal communication only used in the close relatives and friends, especially gossips, friendly chats, and informal discussions. Based on the direction communication, upward communication, especially the lower level to higher level. Example, employees' feedback to a manager report to senior executives. Downward communication. Information flows higher level to lower level. This is a downward communication. For example, the lower level and upward communication or downward communication. In upward communication, the lower level to higher level. For example, a worker conveying the message to the MD or something, the higher officials. Then horizontal communication, horizontal, which means the same level of the same hierarchy level, team discussion and department meeting. Then diagonal communication, interaction between the individual at different levels and departments. A sales executive communicating directly with the finance manager. Based on the context, the interpersonal communication, which means a person conveying his message or anything, his thought to the another person. That group communication takes place in a particular group of people, especially team meeting and group discussion. Then public communication, one person communicate to large audience, especially the political meeting, seminar, conference, and public speeches like that. Then mass communication, here through communication, the person use mass media to cover up a large group of audience, especially television, radio, newspaper, and online media. Modes of communication. Information plays very important role in internal relation. The proper communication between people of a different countries, information can and an instrument of understanding and sharing of knowledge. Mostly communication which used for conveying message to one person to another, especially for understanding the information and sharing the knowledge. The collection of dissemination of information, which means you are spread the information to larger level of people. That is a dissemination. Especially the international film, which means the information organization, leading to unequal sharing of information. In modes of communication, which was divided into verbal communication and non-verbal communication. If you are taking verbal communication, it divided into oral communication, written communication, and visual communication. From oral communication, the communication is done through spoken words. In this particular oral communication, people use the spoken words, especially face-to-face talk, telephonic talk, video chat, television, radio, or chat over internet such as Skype and WhatsApp. In this particular oral communication, the pronunciation, pitch, slang, volume, speed, these may vary person to person. Then written communication. Any written communication that two more people exchange. Written communication is typically from more formal but less efficient than oral communication. Mostly in communication, the oral communication is more effective comparing to written communication. For example, letters, emails, notes, text, billboards. These are all considered as written communication. In visual communication, particularly in visual communication, the people use geographical representation and visual aids. For example, slide presentations, diagrams, physical models, drawings, and illustrations. In nonverbal communication, people use gestures, body language, and facial expression. Often, nonverbal expressions supplement the verbal communication, while a verbal communication, especially in oral communication, the nonverbal communication is also used. Leader often use gestures to emphasize certain points. Especially, the nonverbal communication is an essential tool which makes the communication more powerful. The nonverbal communication types are body language, facial expressions, postures, gestures, and touch.